All right, we're going to talk about two different methods for solving rational equations, but both methods require this first move. The first thing is you have to identify the excluded values. The excluded values are the numbers or the values for x that will make the denominator 0. In this case, our excluded values would be 2 and negative 2. And the next step would be to identify the least common denominator of the fractions in our equation. And this is first done by identifying the unique factors. And in this case, actually, the only unique factors are x minus 2 and x plus 2. So we'll be using this least common denominator in our work. Alright, now let's talk about these two different methods. These are really mathematically the same method, but there's two different ways of looking at it. This first method, you just multiply all the terms in the equation by the least common denominator. And so in this case, we've identified the least common denominator to be x minus 2 times x plus 2. And so we're simply going to multiply each of our fractions or each of our terms in this equation with this. In doing so, what this multiplication by this least common denominator does, it will cancel the common factors in the multiplication in the denominator of each of these. So on the left hand side the x minus 2's cancel, on the right hand side the x plus 2's cancel. So we have now on the left hand side we have this x plus 2 times 1, and on the right hand side we have negative 5 times x minus 2. This is the main goal of the work we're doing. Now this is a simple, well, maybe not simple, but it's a linear equation that we can solve. That first step is really just the main part, that's rational equations. Now we solve this linear equation by distributing the 1 through to get an x plus 2 on the left hand side, distributing a negative 5 through on the right hand side, and then we're going to solve this like we would any linear equation, consolidating our variables. And finally solving for x. By the way, that last step, 8/6, the negatives canceled, 8/6 reduces down to 4/3. Alright, the last step then is just to make sure that this x equals 4/3 is not one of our excluded values, and it was not, because our excluded values were 2 and negative 2. Just a last note on this process, what we're doing, we multiply by the least common denominators, and we're able to do the canceling that I was talking about because we consider this a multiplication that occurs in the numerator. And so we're canceling on the left-hand side this common factor of x minus 2 in the numerator and denominator of fractions that we're multiplying, and on the right-hand side we're canceling that x plus 2. And again, the whole goal of what we're trying to do is get to this situation right here where we've gotten rid of our fractional pieces and we have a linear equation that we can solve through our steps that we know. Alright, let's talk about the second method. In this second method, we're not going to multiply by the least common denominator. Instead, we're going to employ the same technique that we use when we add and subtract rational expressions. We're just going to build these fractions to share the same denominator. So we've identified our least common denominator here as x minus 2 times x plus 2. And so we're just going to add these missing factors to each fraction. On the left-hand side here, we're adding x plus 2. We've got to multiply to the numerator and the denominator. And on the left-hand or the right-hand side, we're going to multiply by this x minus 2 that's missing. So what we have now, on the left-hand side, we have this x plus 2 in the numerator and x plus 2 times x minus 2 in the denominator. On the right-hand side, I'm going to distribute this negative 5 through as I do this. So negative 5 gets multiplied to the x minus 2, give me negative 5x plus 10. And that's all over this x plus 2 times x minus 2. So with this method, what we do is we build all of the fractions or all the terms in our equation to have the same denominator. And then once we have that, we just strike the denominators from the conversation. So now we can remove these x plus 2 and x minus 2 and just set these numerators equal to each other. And that gives us the same equation that we had for the other method of x plus 2 times negative 5x plus 10. And we'd simply just continue solving this in the same way that we showed before. Again, review, this method is not really different because of what's actually happening, but the idea is instead of multiplying by least common denominator, we first build our fractions to have the same denominator. Once we've done that, we can remove the denominators from the equation and just solve the numerators.